Passio. I'm an independent researcher, a public presenter, and a radio talk show host from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Well, I first decided to start taking this information to people after I went through what I would consider a personal spiritual awakening process that pretty much lasted probably a period of over 8 years after I had come out of the dark occult, involvement with dark occultism. And the ideology that I developed when I was involved in that was what I would consider Satanic Ideology. And I became involved in that because in my youth, I had received a lot of religious indoctrination from family members and school teachers, etc., who had basically accepted, a lot of the status quo and a lot of the indoctrination that they had been through as children without any questioning, and then just passed that along to other people. And that kind of upset me, and when I really started asking questions that they had no answers to, it made me realize that this system that they were propagating was really one that was not really based in truth, that it was based in control. And I sought out the exact opposite of religion at that point, and I found it in the form of Satanism. Now, the main tenets of Satanism are putting the self essentially up on a pedestal above all others. And it's about the ego. The ego essentially is the focus of this religion, you could say. And it's about serving the interests of the self at the expense of anyone else. Doing whatever you can to get a leg up on someone else, even if it means that, they have to suffer, if you can profit, then that's fine. Another aspect of Satanism is moral relativism. It's this notion that there is no such thing as objective right or wrong, that right and wrong can be essentially made up at the whims of people, at the whims of humanity. Whatever we want to decide is right for us is what's right, and whatever is somehow bad or distasteful to us, well, that's what's wrong. It has nothing to do whether harm is being caused to anyone or not. It's just all about what are my preferences, likes, dislikes, whims, etc. That's moral relativism. That's what I would consider the second main tenet of this religion. The third main tenet is social Darwinism. That's applying the idea of Darwinistic evolutionary paradigm in the realm of animals, in their instinct and survival mechanisms, taking that into the human social realm and saying, well, we should act like that. We should act like, essentially the beasts in the field, that whatever is required for us to do in the social realm for our betterment and survival, we should act in that instinctual capacity. So that's applying, again, that's that Darwinistic model of quote-unquote evolution. I always say that it's evolution in quotes because it's not real evolutionary progression. It's just the survival of physical genetic material, which isn't what evolution is truly about. Real evolution is about the progression of human consciousness toward greater levels of awareness, complexity, and morality. But they're taking this Darwinistic model and then applying it in the human social domain, and hence the term social Darwinism. Then the fourth major tenet is the notion that, hey, since there's no such thing as right or wrong, and we get to make that up, and since we should apply this dictum of survival of the most ruthless in the human social domain, as we have this notion of survival of the fittest or most ruthless in the animalistic domain, in the animal kingdom, well, we could take that to its logical progression in the fourth major tenet, which is eugenics. The idea that man ultimately gets to decide who goes on and who does not go on, who propagates their genes and who does not propagate their genes, who lives and who dies. It's the idea that man can become God and determine, what ultimately is going to go on here and control everything. So that's what Satanism is at its core ideological foundation. When I became involved with it, after I had this awakening to what religion was, which is a control system, I didn't have the framework and knowledge to understand religion as astrotheology, which would have really helped in my awakening process and would have allayed a lot of the anger that I was experiencing and feeling. Instead, all that anger got eventually converted into hatred and rage at being, quote, lied to, not deliberately, but by rote, by family members and teachers, etc. when I became involved in Satanism to pursue the antithesis of the religious ideology, I realized that it wasn't just individuals who were interested in espousing these tenets individually in their lives, or studying some occulted knowledge to gain some sort of an advantage just in their personal lives, but it was a group of people, very eclectic grouping of people from all walks of life and all social institutions that were working together toward a common agenda. And that agenda was the advancement of their personal power at the expense of everybody else's rights and freedoms. And they didn't make any bones or qualms about it. They said, we're going to enslave people if that's what it takes for us to prosper and rule the roost, so to speak. So at that point, when I recognized, hey, this is all people in positions of power in our society, politicians, lawyers, bankers, judges, police officers, military people, teachers, people involved in education at all levels, people involved in medicine at all levels, entertainment, you name the social institution in humanity, and there were Satanists involved in it, and at very influential levels of power at that. When I recognized that the Satanic Ideology had essentially infiltrated every social institution and walk of life, I decided I don't want to be involved in this, because I'm not about slavery. I may have been about wanting to increase personal power for myself, but certainly was never about slavery ever. And when I realized that's what the agenda was, I decided I can't personally be involved in this anymore. And people will think, well, didn't they want to try to keep you in the fold? And the answer is no, these individuals didn't care. They couldn't care less. When I said I didn't want to be involved anymore, it was like, well, go ahead then. You think we need you? They were kind of grooming me in these early stages to exploit my communications capabilities and, groom me up to higher levels within the hierarchy. But I was still involved at a very, very, very low capacity, what you might even call just cursory or introductory capacity. So my level of involvement was not great at all, and I make, again, no claim that it was. I kind of just got a sneak peek in the door, is the way I look at it, and recognized it for what it was early on, and then started to put down that ideology, and it took time to put it down and get past that worldview. But they didn't want to keep me in the fold. Once I said I didn't want to be involved, it was like, well, we don't need you for what we're doing. If you wanted to be involved, we would use you. We would use your talents and capabilities, but, we're not going to twist your arm to stay with us. And it's not like I knew where bodies were buried, so to speak. So it isn't like I had any information on crimes that they had committed, literally, other than poisoning the ideology of people out there by propagating their entire worldview. But I, over the next then probably 7 to 8 years, slowly, over enormous suffering, put down the Satanic Ideology by having to admit I was wrong about buying into it. And that was a time-consuming process, and a process that was filled with a lot of personal suffering for me. But eventually I decided I was going to expose what this hierarchical network that is operating throughout the world is all about, and how they essentially propagate their techniques of mind control over the human population by getting them to buy into different aspects of this ideology, which I just explained. So essentially that's what I do. I consider myself now a de-occultist of occulted information, and a de-occultist of the knowledge about how the world really works and the ideology that really controls this planet. Do I feel that the whole satanic agenda or the whole satanic religion is a dominant enough threat to the entire human population that people really need to sit up, take notice of what it is and how it operates, and understand what is going on regarding it? And the answer is absolutely yes, I do. These are the people who are ultimately in all the positions of power in the world, and their ideology is the same. They can have slightly different viewpoints on it, but essentially what is running the world is an ideology. And that ideology is those 4 basic tenets. That the self has to be put up on the pedestal above everything else, and it's a me, me, me world. What's good for me is what's good and right, and if it doesn't serve my interests or agenda, then it has to be eradicated. Doesn't make a difference what's moral. Morality can be thrown out the door. I'll get to decide what's moral or not. And, my class of people, those who resonate with me or my ideology, should be the ones who come out on top and ultimately will put down anybody else. And those are the main tenets. We're going to control things here. We're going to decide what's right or wrong for ourselves. In other words, make our own law. That's man wanting to be God. And we're going to rule the pecking order of humanity because we're superior somehow. Whether they consider they're genetically superior, they're superior in their mental faculties, etc. So not to understand that is to invite extreme harm and suffering into our lives, because these people are psychopathic. And psychopaths don't stop coming. They don't stop until they're made to stop. So unless we understand how these people's mind operates, that's knowing the mindset of the enemy. We're involved in a game of chess that we don't even know we're playing. That's where most people are at. They don't even know a game is going on, and they're being beaten mercilessly already. So the psychopathic mindset is what's ultimately running this agenda. And a lot of people have bought into that mindset at a lower level, and they're essentially they're playing into what I call mini-me Satanism. It's Satanism that's operating in the public domain, in the mainstream, and people don't even know it's Satanism. If somebody has the attitude, my life is all about my hedonistic pursuits of pleasure, and whatever benefits me at the expense of anybody else, okay? And I don't care about what's right or wrong. That's Satanism. And most people don't even understand that that is Satanism. They don't even understand they have subscribed at a low level to a dark religion that is operating in their midst, in their presence. So to remain ignorant of this religion and this agenda that it is rapidly progressing in our world is to really invite negative consequences into our life. Only by exposing this and becoming knowledgeable about it are we going to understand what's really going on, or we're going to see the events that are happening in our world in a different light, in a new light, and one where the light of truth shines on this darkness that is taking place, so that we can recognize it for what it is and then take action to do something about it. Is there essentially any evidence that there may be an off-world race or intelligence involved in the satanic hierarchy's agenda, possibly running things here on the earth to keep humanity in the situation of slavery that we are in? And my answer to that is I'm open-minded to that possibility. I'm not going to definitively say, yes, off-world intelligences are still interacting with this planet and controlling the entire agenda here, but I'm not also going to rule that out as a possibility either. I think non-human intelligences have had interaction with humanity, particularly in our ancient past, and may have even been responsible for our origins as we exist now. However, I think more likely than not, if I were pressed to give an answer to this, I would lean toward the speculation that the progeny of the beings that have had interaction with our species in the ancient past is what you are seeing today as the generational bloodline rulers of the modern day ruling class. Not so much that it is being directly controlled by extraterrestrial, non-human, or off-world intelligences. However, with that having been said, that is speculation, and I'm not saying I'm holding fast to that position. I'm open-minded to many different positions when it comes to that, and I am open-minded to the possibility that there is direct involvement with non-human intelligences directly controlling things here. Do I have any direct evidence of that? The answer would have to be no, I do not. But if you look at a lot of the ancient writings of the world that talk about the origins of humanity from many different ancient cultures, you will see that they do talk about non-human intelligences interacting directly with human beings also possibly being directly involved in the creation of humanity as a species itself, and then interbreeding with us, okay, possibly to propagate their own genomic, gene pool. But I feel more likely than not that those bloodlines became the dark occultists that are operating in the world today, rather than them being separate from us and controlling us from the outside. They're right in there among us, having interbred with us generationally for thousands of years, and their bloodlines are what are ultimately in control now in the modern day. I started studying the light aspects of the occult, the positive aspects of the occult. People have to understand that the occulted knowledge or hidden knowledge is not one thing. It is simply information about how the human psyche works and operates, and how the laws of nature work and operate. And those are the two main bodies of knowledge that comprises occultism, or essentially the realm of hidden knowledge. So when you look at how the information is used as a control mechanism by dark occultists, they use it to create a power differential over other people who are ignorant about how those mechanisms work in our lives. The same information could be used for positive motives and the upliftment of humanity if we share that information and try to bring it to people's awareness such that we can raise the collective level of human consciousness. So that is what I would call light occultism, and that is what deeply studies the realm of consciousness and the different aspects of our consciousness, and helps us to understand who we are and how we work, how our psyches operate. When we come into better knowledge of the self, we can't be controlled as easily, because we truly know who we are as spiritual beings, having a physical experience here in this realm, and understanding that what does happen here, the experiences that we undergo, are part of a growth and learning process, and they do matter. So it's not about just a total spiritual daze and thinking nothing that happens in the physical domain matters. It's about understanding the true nature of the spiritual essence of our being, but also having your feet firmly on the ground here on the earth in the physical domain, and doing things to create positive and lasting change right here and now. That is what I would call light occultism, or positive usage of the knowledge that has been so far hidden from us. And in the modern day, in the ancient world, obviously during very draconian times, occultists who were of a positive aspect hid that knowledge to prevent it from being completely lost in draconian times. Now I don't feel there's any valid reason for continuing to occult knowledge, which is why I consider myself as a quote-unquote light occultist. Instead of even looking myself as a light occultist, I consider myself what I call a de-occultist, someone who is unhiding this information that has been hidden up to this point, because we're in a time of opportunity where this information can be revealed and exploded onto the world to create true transformation in consciousness right here and right now. Did some of these ancient mystery schools in the past, was the knowledge that they were hiding this spiritual knowledge of consciousness that we're talking about here? And the answer is yes, absolutely. And that's half of the equation. The other half was that they were hiding knowledge about how natural law works, the laws of morality, which ultimately govern the behavior of human beings and ultimately bring us the experience that we are going to have to deal with and undergo in what we call the human condition as a result of the behaviors that we choose. Those two things are the two biggest bodies of knowledge that comprise occultism in general. And yes, this is the knowledge that the mystery schools had and possessed. And the positive mystery schools at some point, like I said, when times became very draconian and dark occultists were so entrenched in the power structure that it was punishable by death even to talk about some of these topics, they took that into hiding, a lot of that information, in order to protect it. And not only that, in order to protect themselves, so they could even live and act as the stewards for that body of data. So I do understand some of the reasons for hiding it. However, I don't think we're in that position today. We're in a position, again, as I said, of opportunity where we can speak freely still and bring this information out of the realms of concealment and bring it out to people who want it at this time and place. And I think that's a moral obligation to do that because of the precipice that we're on as a species and as a culture. And if we don't do that now, there's going to be severely negative consequences that will result. So I think the people who are in a position of knowledge in that regard have a moral obligation and a responsibility to share that knowledge as widely and as freely as they possibly can right now. My opinion seems to differ. Many people think that the dark forces are on their last leg. I don't necessarily see it like that. I think that they're still very firmly entrenched in our world. That being said, I think that they are concerned. But I don't think they're so over-the-top concerned that they think they're somehow completely losing their grip or control of humanity. Because I don't think enough people are waking up in mass. And I'm not saying that to discourage anybody or to instill fear in anyone. I'm just being honest about how I perceive the dynamic that is unfolding right now. I think our numbers are paltry. The people that understand the truth, the people that understand natural law, the people that understand the occult. Again, not saying this to depress anybody, but I think the overall percentage of people that get that prerequisite and required information for true transformation are absolutely paltry. And I think if we're going to make any real positive, lasting change in the world where it needs to change, not in some other dimension or mental realm only, to change it in the mental realm, but then bring that into the realm of action so that we can change things in the here and now, in the physical domain. The numbers that we need to create some type of a transformation like that are certainly not there yet. I'm not saying they can't get there either. If I didn't think there was any hope, I would just shut my mouth and not say a word. I wouldn't continue to even speak. I do think there is a possibility for change, even at this late hour. But many, many, many more people would have to step up to the plate, put themselves onto the battlefield of information, and get to work. And we need many, many more teachers of natural law out there. I've put out that call an enormity of times, and I'm going to continue to call for that. Because that's the only thing that's going to transform human consciousness, is a deep understanding of natural law principles, how natural law works, and aligning our behavior to it. And unless we have more people teaching that, we're not going to have more people receiving it. So more people need to learn that for themselves and then start to be a teacher of that information to other people. If we do that in massive enough numbers, we can change the game here on Earth. If we don't do that, nothing's going to change and things are going to get rapidly worse. I would say the thing that led to the deeper awakening in me was personal suffering in my life. That is what I think most people who have a really hard ego attachment to their former belief systems generally eventually awaken from, unfortunately. It's what I call the way of maximum pain, is the way I chose as an individual. Poor choice. I do what I do now to try to prevent people from going down that path unnecessarily. But enormous suffering in my life really led me to my spiritual awakening. The other thing that helped was the usage of entheogenic compounds in somewhat controlled ways, not in over-the-top, uncontrolled, random ways, but in directly approaching them from a perspective of using them for helpers to expand and enlighten consciousness. So I took it from a very respectful approach when it came to the usage of those compounds. And while I did commune with substances such as cannabis or psilocybin, which were very helpful, the main compound that I found of transformative value for me was dimethyltryptamine. And that is a very direct experiential projection into the realm of deep consciousness through a very unusual otherworldly experience that cannot simply be attributed to a 20-atom indole molecule, as far as I'm concerned. That's like sort of something that, to me, changes the antenna receiver transception reception device that is the human brain for a time, such that we can pick up some different frequencies that are taking place all around us. And it was also an experience that I think got rid of any existential doubt about death being the cessation of consciousness for me personally, because the experience was so strange, unusual, and otherworldly that it sort of confirmed for me there are other vistas of consciousness out there that are, barely touched upon by us. They're all existing in different frequencies of existence simultaneously, and consciousness just keeps going and going and going and doesn't end. It may transform its perspective, it may transform its particular physical incarnation or form, but it continues to persist and to learn and to grow. So that was a big part of my transformation in my personal worldview, spiritually as well. And I would say those two things, suffering, the employment of psychedelics or entheogenic compounds, were very helpful in that domain as well. And I would say the third thing would be, would be book study as well, particularly in the realms of light occultic studies. Things like studying Hermetic philosophy, Rosicrucian philosophy, Freemasonic philosophy, Kabbalistic philosophy, all in, of course, the positive senses. Of course, any ideology or philosophy can be twisted or perverted into something it's not intended to be. But, looking into these light aspects to occultic mystery traditions helped tremendously in my personal transformation as well. Also, things like studying the tarot and symbolism was tremendously transformative for me personally. And I would highly recommend any of those topics to anybody that wants to increase their personal knowledge. So I would say overall, the answer to your question, it was a combination of many different things that ultimately led to my awakening process. With what's going on in the world today, the solution is ultimately changing the way we think about our position in the whole universe, our position in this world, the effect that we can have personally. And we can empower ourselves through knowledge of the self, through knowledge of natural law. We can take that truth into ourselves, and then we could do something positive and transformational with it by communicating it to other people and propagating it. And that is what our moral obligation is at this time as conscious, awoken souls, to say, I'm not only going to seek the truth, but I'm also going to speak the truth to others. And that is what the great work is all about. It is about taking what you have learned and helping someone else who is currently in a state of ignorance of that powerful, empowering information, and then enlightening them to that knowledge by communicating it, not remaining silent, standing up in courage and saying, I'm going to speak the truth. Okay? When we do that, if enough of us do that collectively, overall aggregate consciousness of humanity can change. And if we do that, it will change. And that's ultimately what this is all about. This is about sharing what we have come to know with others who have not yet gone down that path. Because, I would not have awoken to the level that I have if others didn't, in their consciousness and in their love, decide I'm going to take my time and my attention and I'm going to share this information that I've come to understand with other people. So if we want to pay it back, pay it forward, so to speak, we have to take our part in that same process of communicating what we have come to know and what has helped us to learn and grow with all the others that are around us who are still in a state of ignorance and suffering as a result. That is what the real great work is about. And that is what I think many, many, many more people need to become directly involved in doing. If we do that, we're going to see things turn around for the better for our species.